Beloved heart, I invite you to sign up to my mailing list, and as a result of signing up, you will get a free gift. It's a 5D rebalance tune up of all these chakras, and chakras are my specialty. So I would love to gift you with this transmission that is filled with light language and codes to help you stay balanced and tuned up during these increased frequencies of energy of this ascension, this new earth frequency. So check out the links in the notes of this show, and I look forward to connecting with you. I am sending you love. This is the transfiguration of the new you.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of my podcast. I have a very special guest here with us, Naomi Nye, who comes in with a very unique experience and perspective on helping the youth and the children, who are the future of the new earth. And I want to share a little bit about Naomi before we jump in. Naomi's journey has been marked by challenges from the very start, as she was born with a club foot. Throughout her life, she faced numerous hurdles, not only related to her health, but also in the realms of family, relationships, life's trials, and spirituality. Her struggle persisted until her 40s when she confronted her darkest moment, an unsuccessful suicide attempt. It was during this time that Naomi discovered the transformative power of personal development, initially guided by the teachings of Tony Robbins. In Naomi's words, I finally found the keys to unlock my own mind after years of feeling trapped. Today, her mission is crystal clear: to empower teenagers with the mindset and tools they need to conquer life's challenges with unwavering positivity, develop their character, and uncover the profound meaning that life has to offer. So that is an amazing bio introduction of Naomi. So I want to just set the intention here for this episode. And the intention really is to provide ways for parents to be better equipped to help the future leaders of the new earth. So I want to say welcome to you, Naomi. Thank you so much for being on my podcast, sharing your wisdom with us and your experience.
Oh, I'm so glad to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Such a pleasure and a joy. And, just reading your bio is amazing. I didn't even realize of your attempted suicide, which is a really hardcore, event to experience. And I was just, curious what led you to this mission of helping children and youth, and I imagine that's mostly teenagers that you help.
Yes, I work with teenagers and families. I work with mothers as well. And the reason why I got into personal development and I decided to help youth was for the reason in my bio. When that moment came in my life, I tried to take my own life unsuccessfully, thank God.
Yeah.
And I was sitting there, the question I kept on asking myself was, how did I get here? How did I get here? And it took me a while to find the answer. But what I realized is that I lacked simple things that is what our youth is lacking today. Things as simple as having certain life skills like self-regulation, having emotional intelligence, having purpose in your life. These things, they sound like really big words, but they're really simple things that we can start teaching our youth in their lives as they are developing and as they are growing up. And they what they do is they create a roadmap for you. So when you don't have these skills, you end up like I did, you end up very lost. You end up without direction, without knowing what your values are. You end up asking yourself, what am I doing? um you know and this is what happens to a lot of us. And so when that moment came to me, I realized that, wow, it sounds really complicated, and it's not. It's very easy. What it is it's something that takes time. And I realized, these skills are not a luxury. They shouldn't be, reserved for a special few elite. This should be something that should be provided and given to all our youth. And unfortunately, these kind of skills are not taught in the school system. And we could talk about the
Mm-hmm.
school system a little later,
Yeah.
but I started realizing when I was doing my research, all of these things just started hitting me, and I was like, wow, there's something wrong here. And this is what I want to focus on, because if we don't focus on youth, I mean, they are, like you said in the title, they are the actual future. And this is the reason why we have a society that is so troubled today. We look at our leaders and I laugh, because when I look at them, I just see a whole bunch of men running through their inner child wounds, right? Making
Mm-hmm.
decisions out of that subconscious mind, out of that little boy or little girl that never healed. And this is what is running their lives and what is running our world. And I think we definitely need to do this, because we need to give our youth the tools so that they make better decisions, so that we have a better future. Because obviously we're going through a great change in the world. And so we want to be prepared for this new future.
Yeah, I love that. And you and I, and I'm sure a lot of listeners out there are way showers, for a lot of these young kids. And I personally myself do have a lot of passion for helping kids, and I've done mentoring. I still do on the side, as a volunteer work, because I feel like they are so key and important for us for the new earth. They're the ones who
Yes.
are going to be leading us in these whole new structures as things are, as we're witnessing a lot of, different changes going on in the world, right?
Yes.
Getting into like some of the chaotic energy, which things, it seems like things are getting a lot worse, which they are,
Yes.
because
Yes.
there's a lot of stuff that's being released, and that has been hidden for so long, but it's now being
Yes.
revealed as truth, right? It's being obvious now that it's always been there. Um,
Yeah.
and we could probably go on into different areas about that. But that is, one of the things that we as, spiritual warriors, or like I consider you as like this big road warrior, Naomi. It's like
Thank you.
going out there with this message to help kids. And I so admire that, and I feel
Thank you.
inspired by your messages that I see you like all the time on like Instagram, in other areas, even on podcasts, right? Because you've been on different podcasts as well, which is why I wanted to invite you to come over to my podcast. I want to emphasize this point about our youth.
Yes.
And so, because they're so important for us, and they're also, even the ones that are here now are experiencing, a lot of this chaos as well. So I'm sure it's
Yes.
causing a lot of depression and, grief in some way in them. And, I also see
Yes.
this with my nieces and nephews as well. They're extra sensitive than
Yes.
than most of the majority who grew up in previous generations. I myself personally have grown up to be a very sensitive child. I was born during a time when it was even tougher to talk about it, right?
Yes. Yes. You look like an HSP. You're a highly sensitive person. Is
Hmm.
that, and so am I. And that there's many reasons why we become these people. And I think people have the wrong notion about it. So they think that because you're a
Hmm.
highly sensitive person, you're a soft person,
You're weak.
and you're weak. And there's a
Hmm.
big difference. And this is what we need to show. Being sensitive is actually it's a
It's a
great
powerful. I
trait.
call it a
to,
superpower.
it is a superpower because you're able to read people very well, and you're able to get people's energy, and you're able to just get the energy and be able to read a room. There's a lot of advantages to that,
Hmm.
and even in relationships there's a lot of advantages because you're picking up cues on people, so you're able to mold and move
Hmm.
around and be
Hmm.
very careful. So it's a really good trait to have. The thing is that nowadays, that's not what we're seeing. We're confusing the sensitive with the soft. And that's what's happening with our youth.
Hmm.
And that is what my big concern is. What you're seeing in school systems and in the media today is promoting feelings, you know? And it's good to be in tune with your feelings. I mean, that's what we talk about a lot. You know, we have that intuition. But again, the intuition is not the same as the feeling, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And that's where the difference lies. I mean, imagine if we based everything on our feelings, like, oh, you know, I'm feeling a little sad today, so I'm not going to go into work. It doesn't work that way. You know, life doesn't work that way. And the thing is that we're teaching our youth that the feeling is the most important thing and that everything is based on our feeling. And so when you do this, and I know this from my own personal experience, when you do this, you get a little too self-involved
Mm-hmm.
and the me comes out. And it's funny because we're seeing a society that is being, I don't, again, I don't know if I said
Mm-hmm.
this when we spoke earlier, but it feels like it has a narcissistic tendency and a weak tendency. And it's because of this, it's because we're basing everything on the feeling. And although it's good to be in touch with your feelings, but your feelings can't dictate what you
Mm-hmm.
do. You know, they're there as a
Yeah.
roadmap, but they're there not to dictate. And so the problem is that we're focusing too much on certain things that don't have importance, and youth are losing themselves. And at the same time, the school is not giving them the skills to have the resiliency, the regulation to be able to deal with all these emotions that they're having. And so they feel lost.
Yeah, and there is a lot of confusion and lost, and and I feel like a lot of the children right now are more HSP. I think there's more being
Yes.
born than there was in previous generations, like in
Yes.
when my time that I was, born and grew up, because being an HSP, a highly sensitive person, was, I was constantly criticized for it.
Yes.
And
So is that.
which I overcame, a lot of those things in myself. And I did, an episode actually on my podcast. I call it Being Sensitive is Your Superpower. And so
Yes.
I do emphasize that, part of us of being a superpower, and, talking about like feelings is more like the emotional body, right? And
Yeah.
so our emotional body is actually like an actual body within ourselves also, that's
Yeah.
integrated as part of us being, this new human, but being aware of that it's there and that it is part of us, as a human being here on this earth. But
Yeah.
like you've shared, those emotions are not going to get you like anywhere, if you're gonna be like reaction, all the time, like right now there's a
Exactly.
lot of triggering, a lot of polarization, and a lot of our social media is showing a lot of that, where people get very polarized or triggered or on edge. you know is draining.
Yeah, it is draining. And you know, it's the sad thing is that we're teaching, you know, our youth that, you know, it's our way or the highway, and that's not good because, you know, the most important thing is that I can believe in something and you can believe in something different. And the beautiful thing is that we can come together and we could debate these differences. And that is a healthy approach. But the approach that we're seeing today with this polarization and what we're seeing that is filtrating down to our youth is like, oh no, I'm like this, I identify as this. If you identify as something else, then you're bad,
Hmm.
you know? And
Hmm.
that's it. And our defense goes up, and that's creating all the problems that we have today. And going back to even what we were talking about, the sensitive and the emotions, you know, I used to get criticized for being very sensitive. I would always
Hmm.
be told, oh, you're so sensitive.
Yeah,
And
exactly. They'll
I
brush it
had
off,
to,
right, like it's nothing.
exactly. And, you know, that's the thing. You can't invalidate someone's feelings. You
Hmm.
know, you don't want to invalidate. So with our youth, we don't want to invalidate their feelings. You know, we want to listen and have that open
Exactly.
dialogue. So it's important, and this we'll get into when it comes to the parenting, because this is a
Yeah.
very interesting like little topic to have, because it's these little things that we're confusing, and so that
Hmm.
is what is affecting our youth. So, you know, one thing is someone criticizing you because you have an emotion and saying, oh, you're being too sensitive,
Hmm.
and shutting down that emotion, because what that does is that creates trouble for you
Hmm.
in your older years. As you already know, you said that you've done a lot of healing process
Hmm.
with this. So has I, because what that says to you when you do that to your child is that you're not valued. that you're not worthy, and it creates a feeling of unworthiness, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we
Mm-hmm.
have to be very aware of not doing that. But then the other thing that parents are doing is, okay, so they went from that to the other spectrum, where now a child feels his feelings got hurt, and the parent goes running to the school, talks to the parent, creates a complaint. And so it doesn't let that child develop that backbone that they need in order to be able to confront life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a big difference, and we don't want to do that. We don't want to be the parent that enables the child. And so that is what we're seeing in society today too, with the school system enabling children and with the parents enabling children. So I think that the conscious parenting or the gentle parenting has changed from gentle parenting a little bit to permissive parenting, which is completely different. Because I could be very gentle, but I could tell you, no, you're not going to go to this party this weekend for these reasons. I'm not going to say no because I say so. We're going to talk about it, but I'm still going to be firm, although I'm being very gentle. So that's the little difference. Those are the little twerks that we have to like start
Mm-hmm.
creating in our family practice and in our school system, so that we could start
Right.
creating youth that are strong and that have those skills to overcome challenges. Because like, what kind of future are we going to have, right? What kind of leaders are we going to have? What kind of doctors are we going to have if they're
Yeah.
constantly worried about their feelings? You know, talking about the feelings, I remember, you know, when I was young, my first surgery was when I was 3 months old. So my entire first 12 and a half years of my life, I was having surgeries. I had casts up to my thigh for 9 to 12 months in a row. So it was very difficult. And of course, you know, I would get bullied. My feelings were hurt. All this bunch of stuff was going on within me. But one thing that my parents did that was really good is that they helped me through that by building me up and making me strong. So, uh, they would listen to me not feeling well, listen to me not feeling okay, but then they would say, okay, but it's time to get up. And now we need to do this. And now you have to do this. You have to be stronger. You can do this. You understand? So then the child is able to get out of themselves and say, okay, so this is going on. Okay, but now I have to focus outward, you know, not focus on myself so much on what's wrong with me, and focus outward and focus on either doing something, on helping others, on what is my purpose, what is my goal, right? And so that's one thing that I noticed that was really important that happened to me, and why I didn't become a victim when I was a child and going through all those challenges, because I stayed very focused and because my parents didn't do a lot of the enabling that's happening today. And so that's what I'm seeing. And that's what I'm hoping to be able to create a change with, you know, the families that I work with and the programs, so that we could get back to, you know, building our children up instead of like breaking them down. And I'm not saying that parents are doing this on purpose, or teachers are not doing this on purpose. We're not going to talk about the system, but we're going to talk about those that have their hands on. I think that they are misguided in some ways as well, and they're trying to do the best, and
Mm-hmm.
they don't have the right tools to do it.
Yeah, and part of it is because we've been engraved by the old system, right, of the
Yeah.
old earth, which is competitive separation, and it's about the I only, not about the
Yes.
we, not about the collective. So not realizing how much of, the things that we also do does impact, the majority and the collective as well.
Yes.
And, I like how you said earlier about like the inner child wounds, when you grow up, you still have those wounds in you. And so
Yes.
I like that, what your message is about healing that now in the youth, right? And I feel like that's a big important part of your mission. But anything else in relation to that with the youth and their importance, why the focus on them, now that you want to share an insight with us on that, especially to the listeners if they're parents.
Well, we're talking about the inner child healing. And, you know, the interesting thing is that all of us get wounded, right? And our developmental years are the most important years because that's when we're building ourselves up. So if we get broken in that early age, we struggle so much throughout the rest of
Mm-hmm.
our lives, you know? Um, But it's really important to note that, for example, I had a podcast interview with an ACEs specialist. And
Mm.
so when I was looking through the list, there's a lot of things that are involved in the ACEs, which is adverse childhood trauma, something that we all go through.
Oh.
And, about 60 to 82% of humans have
Mm-hmm.
experienced some adverse childhood trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And that could be anything like bullying,
Yep.
emotional neglect, something like that. There's so many, there could be physical violence. There's a lot of things that go into it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it says that if you experience more than four, then you're in for a life of emotional, emotional trouble, right? And challenges. So that's the thing to keep in mind. And the thing is that a lot of parents are not aware of what this entails. And so, for example, we see a child that is acting out, and this is what I get. I get parents that come to me and their child is acting out. And so they want to address the acting out. But what we have to do, and this is what we have to do, even you and I as adults, but what parents have to do, or counselors and stuff like that, is to go to the root of the problem, right? We tend
Mm-hmm.
to put a band-aid on everything, like with medication. Everything is a
True.
band-aid. Everything's a band-aid.
Yep.
And it's getting to the root of the problem. So then, okay, why is the child acting out?
Yeah.
And then we get to the bottom of it. Oh, well, there's something underlying. He's been getting bullied in school for over a year, but these
Mm-hmm.
conversations aren't being had at home, right? And so it's important to note that these are the things that go building that character. And then you grow up being that insecure adult who doesn't have the skills and then struggles with either addiction. And this is happening earlier and earlier and earlier. We're seeing like 12, 13, 14-year-olds that are having drinking problems, that are having drug problems. And it's all stemming from these things. And they all come together because,
Mm-hmm.
we all go through trauma,
Yep.
right? But then most of us are not equipped to deal with the trauma. A lot of parents right now are dealing with their own traumas. So it's very hard for them to now help their children because they still haven't gone through the process themselves. So it's a really difficult journey when it comes to the human experience, because there's so many things that are underlying that we go through, right, that are important. But it's understanding this, and I believe the most important thing is having that self-awareness, right?
Yeah.
It's being aware, because you know what?
Exactly.
There's two things that I could say about this. We're never going to get everything 100% perfect. We're imperfect humans. So there's no such thing as perfection anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
We can get as close to perfect, you know, and that goes the same with parenting. You're never going to be the perfect parent. You're never going to be able to give your child 100% of everything they need. But I think that if you go into the game saying, okay, I'm going to be aware. I'm going to go in as thinking, this is a team, this is a collaborative effort, you know, and not getting into the certain things that we all get into relationships, whether it's control issues, power struggles, the wanting to be right, all of these things. If we're able to be aware of these little things, then as parents, then we will create a positive home environment, and we will create good kids. I see such a big difference when I am in Europe and when I'm here. I have my family in Spain. All my friends are in Spain. They have kids, and their kids are teenagers too, just like
Mm-hmm.
teenagers here.
Mm-hmm.
But they've had a completely different experience. And my family and my friends in Spain, they're Jehovah Witness, so they're very strict. It's not like
Mm-hmm.
they're very, and yet even being strict and their children will deciding not to follow their path and stuff like that, they still have an amazing relationship with their children, and their children are still doing amazing things because they set certain things in place.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really important to set these things in place. And that's why, I always tell parents that they should have family meetings.
Mm-hmm.
you know
Oh,
um
yeah.
I usually even tell couples, you guys should have a family meeting, because when you get certain things in order and in sync, you have less trouble. I was listening to Brene Brown's interview, and she was saying something that really like floored me, because it's so simple. So when you don't have your values in check, and this happens in a lot of couples too, when you don't talk about these important things, that's when the problems start happening. So in her home, they were obsessed with football. They were obsessed with like the cheerleader, being popular, all this stuff. But Brene Brown, she's a thinker. She's more into debates. She's more into reading. She's more into books. But
Mm-hmm.
her family, her parents were into something completely different. So what does she do? She tried to please her family. So what did she do? Well, they wanted her to be a cheerleader, to go in the drill team, and she failed both, right? And so what happened? She felt like a failure. And what did she start doing? She started drinking. She started doing other stuff. She started
Mm-hmm.
being reckless. And so she didn't get the parents' approval, but she got the friends' approval, because now she was, the rebel. She was this, she was that. But then what started happening? She started having trouble in her life. And so through this experience, she realized, wow, this is why it's so important that as a family, we set values. So you might have different values, but when you set your values and you say, okay, well, this is what's important for me, and you know what's important for everyone, you create a common value and a
Mm-hmm.
common goal for whether it's your relationship,
Mm-hmm.
your home. We do it in business all the time. We have the mission statements, and we have the vision, and we have the meetings and all of this stuff, and we prepare so much for that aspect. But when it comes
Mm-hmm.
to our personal lives, we don't do the work
Mm-hmm.
you know
Yeah.
so that's why, like, a simple example like that, you're like, wow, something as clear as setting the values. Well,
Mm-hmm.
now you might have different values, but when you're in sync on a common value and a common goal, your children are not going to struggle, with these things, because they're going to feel seen. They're going to feel heard in their home. They're going to be like, I see you seeing me. We might not agree, but I still see you seeing me, and I still feel accepted by you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so now I can move forward in the world. So, I thought that that was an amazing example and something
Yeah.
like really key.
And part of it, it's having that mutual respect for one another and having to understand, that respecting each other's like healthy boundary, for instance, like if
Yes.
you have certain values that you want to share with others, then it's a matter of respecting one another as to what
Yes.
those are. And, as you were talking, I was just remembering because you were talking about the development of the youth, right? The importance, the role, right? Which is why you're so focused on them. And I was just remembering my teenage years
Yeah.
that how much, highly sensitive I was. And the children, the youth that I work with now, they remind me so much of myself when I was a teenager, of their
Yes.
highly sensitivity, aspect. And, going back, I remember that I constantly had like a lot more depression because for me, I always felt like I was very different and I really
Yes.
didn't fit a lot of the society norms, which is how a lot of the teenagers feel right now too.
Yeah.
And, a lot of that's changing. That's why things look like they're getting worse. Um, but I had like a lot of that going on growing up. And so part of it's because I didn't realize how different I was. And so now I know, that that how different I was within myself, the more I started to tap more into my own soul and also my own remembrance and reawakening in that aspect. So I feel like that's, a very important part of the parenting of like the teaching in the children and nurturing and embracing their, uniqueness in that difference, as to
Yes.
where they feel like, at a soul level, they're very different. And,
Yeah.
so that's, I just wanted to share that because, as I was like, hearing you talk about it, I, resonate so much with what you're sharing in regards to the youth right now. And I do feel for them because they're probably like, this is such a harsh, conditional, world. And,
Yeah.
some of those things that helped me like um to get through a lot of my depression was getting more into the mystical studies. So I grew up with mystical studies. And so the more that I started to learn about that, it just felt like I was at home. So I
Yes.
feel like a lot of the youth already come with that wisdom, that knowledge, in them. So we shouldn't take them for granted just because they're a certain age that they're not wise. They're actually much wiser than we realize. If you really talk to
Yeah.
them, like they talk like they're adults already, like they already know like a lot of information in most cases, with a
Yeah.
lot of the youth. And so that's, something that I wanted to share. And um, so I was wondering, from your insight, what role does the school play in society now?
Yeah, so unfortunately, this is the thing. Our schools should be there. One, we need to go out in the world and make money, right? We need to go out of the world and survive, the world. And it just shocks me that we're in school for 18, well, not 18 years, but from like the ages of 4 to like 18, our entire lives. Some kids enter preschool already by like the age of 3, right? And then after that, we're still sent to school to now really learn, they say, and now we have to pay for it. And it's like, we're still not being taught about money, which is the most important thing, and about how to overcome life's challenges, which if because you've been on this earth for like 40 something years, right? That, when life is easy, when life is good, it's easy to be happy. It's easy to be okay when things are going good. When life is challenging is when we need those skills, and then we're not being taught those skills, right? So they can't seem to function out in the real world because of that. So, that's what I see with the school system, that they're not giving our youth these executive functioning skills. And the interesting thing is that, I don't know if you've been reading the papers lately or anything like that, but institutions like Harvard and Stanford, they're even taking applications from students who have not been to school, because they've realized that
Hmm.
homeschoolers have such good what you call executive functioning skills, like emotional intelligence,
Yeah.
communication skills. They have resilience, and they're realizing that kids that are coming straight from school, they just don't have it. And as a matter of fact, Fortune 500 companies as of now do not require a college degree for you to have any position. They haven't even taken it out of entry level. They've
Hmm.
taken it out even CEO positions, because they've realized that even in college, and I've been reading a lot of studies in like Harvard, the dropout rates because of these students, they can't hack it through school.
Hmm.
So this is my pet peeve with the school system, because they're not giving the youth and the young adults, even when we get into these institutions, the skills that they need to get on in the world. And that's why we're seeing, so many of these things that are going on, addiction is
Hmm.
higher than ever, and we could talk about addiction because there's so many different type of addictions. Your addiction could be food, your addiction could be your phone, even
Yeah.
exercise can become an addiction,
Like the
everything
video
is in
games like the kids play, like, is an addiction.
exactly is an addiction. And the reason why they're developing these addictions is twofold. One is because, they can't cope. So what happens, I mean, you've been through points in your life when you can't cope, your brain automatically wants to escape. When it can't deal, it wants to run. And I've noticed this in my body when you're like going crazy inside because you're so uncomfortable. So what do? They're like, I can't deal with it. So they totally escape, and they use video games, et cetera, as an addiction, right? And then the second aspect of the same reason of maybe why they're addicted to video games is because in our school system, we're not focused on the individual. It's a cookie cutter. It's a system that's a one size fits all. And we're all individuals. And for example, there's 7 different types of intelligence. Our schools only focus on academic intelligence, right? They've taken a lot of electives and a lot of stuff out of our school system.
It's
Like, for
all
example,
mental, like rather
it's
than just the heart. They don't teach you
ex-
about the heart. Like it's all
exactly.
disconnected pretty much. Like
That's what's going on. We're more disconnected than ever when we should be more connected, because we
hmm.
are more connected. But internally, we're going through that struggle, right? We're more
Yes.
disconnected.
Yes.
And, when you think about it, it's like, okay, so I don't want to be a scientist. I don't want to be a mathematician. I don't want to go into sports. I don't, so then what? There's
Hmm.
nothing for me. So all these youth are feeling like there's no place for them in the world, like they don't belong. And then when you're in the school system, there's no individuality. The way that we learn is through interest. So I'm going to pay attention to you because I'm interested in the subject and because it pertains to me, right?
Hmm.
So right there off the bat, 70% of kids in school are not paying attention because one, they're not interested. because there's only a small amount that go into these sciences and these type of careers, or they can
Mm-hmm.
go into sports and become an NBA or or
Yeah.
something like that, NFL player. It's so small, right?
Yeah.
And so then they're like,
Well,
okay,
that's
I'm
the way
not
society has taught us, right? That these are high value professions, and that is the
exactly.
only way to go if you're going to be like, you know, recognized.
Exactly. And so no wonder we feel lost and no wonder
Yeah.
we feel like we don't belong, right? Because we feel like there's no place for us. And then we spend our entire lives trying to find our place in the world. So
Mm-hmm.
then, these are the little things that I notice. It's like, wow. So and I notice it in my own clients, just giving like, I've had children that the parent has come to me and says, well, my child is one notice away from getting expelled. And so when we go in and we start, going into the root of the problem, it's always the usual suspects. It's always the same suspects. So it's that their life is lacking that meaning, right? We have a lot of information. There's a lot of information out there that our youth has that we didn't have, but now it's putting it all together. And if you notice, I don't know if there's been points in your life where you didn't have direction. When you don't have direction, what happens? Like, even if you want to start a business, and this happened to me starting my business, I
I
wanted to
think it
start a
happens for
business.
a lot of us because we're not taught how to run our own business. You have to kind of learn
Exactly.
that on your own.
Yeah. And so you're like, okay, so you get a little overwhelmed and you're
Yeah.
like, okay, but when you start like creating a little roadmap and you're like, okay, so this is what I want. This is
Mm-hmm.
what I want to do. This is what I need to get there. Then your anxiety starts dissipating because now you have a little bit of a roadmap. Now you have a little bit of a plan. And now every day you could start taking a small step towards that plan. That doesn't happen with our youth, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not happening for them
No,
because
not at all.
when they're going through school, no one's talking to them about what they value, what their purpose is. No one's teaching them all the great things they're good at because, we base our school on so many little skills that then if you're not good at that, well, you think you're not worthy, which is what happened to me. I was a straight C student, you know? And
Uh,
I thought that I wasn't smart. I thought that I wasn't good and, I couldn't be the cheerleader.
mm,
I wasn't the math smart girl. So it's like, I understand youth because, I was there. And so those are the things that the school system is lacking. And that's why, I'm so happy that there are new roads that are being paved by different people creating
mm-hmm.
these systems. And that's why, when we talk about the new world, I say, yeah, there is a new world coming because this one that we've created isn't working anymore.
No, it's not. Not for the new kid, not for the new youth, for
No,
these particular high sensitive people, because it
exactly.
doesn't work for them at all, the systems. And I feel like
No,
pandemic kind of showed us that a lot of that too, and
yes.
kids studying at home, having virtual.
Yeah.
And it worked. You could do the virtual. And I'm glad that that's being embraced now about the homeschooling. And
Yes.
I seen like my younger cousin who he did homeschooling. He was like very successful, he got his doctorate. He was like the first in the family to get a doctorate. And
Nice.
so he, was very highly, sufficient himself. And so on top of that, he got into philosophy because I triggered that in him. And so from there,
Nice.
he now started his own podcast, which I'm like really, amazed and proud with him with what he's doing. I'm sure he won't mind me sharing this because like he's talked about me also in his podcast. So
That's so cute. But you see, and so it's obvious that you have been a mentor and a positive influence in his life as well, and
yes.
you've inspired him into something positive. And this is I was talking to a teacher, and this is what she was saying, that the kids that have a disability, whether it's ADHD or they're dyslexic or something like that, they create these special systems to help them, right? And then if you're the really, really, really smart academic kid, that's into the sciences and the maths and all of that, then you find your place. But then all the other kids are the ones that are falling through the wayside. And that's what we need. We need like more mentors and more people like showing them the way, because
Mhm.
that's really what's important.
Exactly. It doesn't have to be just the parents or guardians,
Exactly.
the others
Well,
as well.
you know, there's this saying, it takes a village.
Yeah,
And
perfect.
that's important for a reason, because it used to take a village to be able to raise someone and to have that community. Belonging is a human need. We
Mhm.
can't avoid that. It's one of the six basic human needs. We search for that belonging, and the thing that we all struggle with is that we confuse that acceptance for the belonging. And so acceptance and belonging is not the same thing, because in order to be accepted,
Yeah.
what do you have to do? So when let's say you want to hang out with the really cool kids, right? Okay, well, so now you got to see, well, what do the cool kids wear? What do the
Yeah.
cool kids say?
I've seen
Where
too
do the
many
cool,
movies of that.
right? Where do the cool kids hang out? But it sounds like a cliche, but it happens. It
Mhm.
happens to all of us, right? And so then now we think, okay, so I have to change the way I dress, the way I think, the way I do this to fit in. And then we think, when I fit in, I'm gonna be so happy. I'm gonna be so happy. And then what happens to all of us? We realize, no, because what happens is, okay, now we fit into that group, but now we lost ourselves.
Right, exactly.
And that's what's happening to our youth. They're trying to fit in all these little boxes that we're putting for them,
That
you know,
society has created a long time ago. It's not working.
exactly. And it's not working.
We're
And
breaking the boxes.
exactly. And exactly. That's what we need to do. We need to break the boxes and just start over, just erase and start over. You know?
Burst the bubble, break the boxes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's like you said, it's before the rainbow comes the
Mm.
storm. And in
Yeah.
order to create a new road, you have to break the old road that's broken and that's got the bumps and everything. And it gets really messy when you break the road. It gets really messy. There's a lot of dust, and it's really like,
Yeah.
and for a while, you're like, what's gonna happen? And I think we're in that place where we're breaking all of these roads.
We're in the storm pretty much right now.
We're in the
Yeah.
storm, and it is a spiritual war, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And in every war there's casualties, and I feel that the biggest casualty right now is our youth,
Mm-hmm.
because now we have everyone fighting. And it's funny, like, fighting for the attention is really fighting for their soul, when you think about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And so we have advertisement agencies fighting for the attention, and it's funny because you think of a kid, like, you want to buy him a toy. Things used to be so different before. So he gets a toy, and what happens? Because I've given my cousins toys, I've babysit kids, my students. I used to have a class I used to teach English, and I had 5-year-olds. Oh my God, that was hard. That was hard. You want to talk about challenge? Keep 15 like 5-year-olds in check. That
Oh
is
my
really
God, that is
challenging.
challenging, yes.
That is really challenging. And what happens? They get bored quick, right? You give them
Yeah.
that shiny toy, they're like, wow, their eyes open this big and they're super excited. But then what happens after 5 minutes? They don't want that
Move
toy anymore.
on.
And you got to get another toy. Exactly.
They're much
And
smarter now. They're growing up much smarter.
exactly. And what we have to do is take the toy and teach them how to create things on their own. We got to go
Mhm.
back to like the
Yeah.
old ways, because the creativity is dying. And I think that when we lose our
Oh,
creativity, we lose our soul. And so, like I was
mm.
saying
A
earlier,
nice
like,
expression.
it's
It's a
true
part
though.
of our
It's true
soul.
though. It is. Think about your happiness and what makes your soul happy,
Yeah.
you know? And it's the same thing with our youth. And I feel like we're killing their spirit. And it's a
Mm.
very dangerous thing to do, to
Yeah.
kill someone's spirit. And that's why I feel like it is a spiritual war in our child's mind, because like I was saying about the marketers and the companies, that produce things, they want customers. So they're not looking at our children as our children that need to grow and flourish. They're just thinking of it as a product and a customer.
Mhm.
And so we don't realize that all these little things that we're giving our kids to entertain them, like for example, like the phone, is taking away from their creativity, is taking away from all these other things that could help them develop that self-awareness and that knowing. So what we're seeing today is a whole bunch of kids that are experts at being entertained.
Mhm.
right?
Yes.
But they don't know, one, how to entertain themselves, and
Mm-hmm.
two, how to be bored and sit with themselves, right? And
Yeah.
three, how to create. And so that's what's happening, and that's a really big problem that we're seeing today, and we're seeing it in the decline in children failing classes, in children dropping out, in children, right now.
A lot more than usual, right?
Yeah, well, let me just tell you, these numbers are scary. So
Mm-hmm.
the second leading cause of death among 12 to 25-year-olds is suicide in the United
Oh my
States.
God. The 25%?
The second leading cause of death between 12-year-olds and 25-year-olds is
Oh,
suicide. That's the second leading. That
second. Oh my
is,
God.
that's an epidemic. Like,
Yeah, that
you want to
is.
talk about epidemics. I don't know why that's not being played in the news every single day. So I forget
Wow.
how, like, is it every 16 minutes or something like that? I forgot. Because it's been a long time since I looked at this statistic. It's been months. But
Mm-hmm.
there's some child dying or trying to commit suicide in the United States. To me, that's an epidemic
That is
that
an
needs to
epidemic.
be talked about more.
Yeah. And I'm glad we're talking about it now.
Yes, because we don't realize it. And so obviously, our youth is struggling. And so they need help.
Yeah, it's so important. I'm so glad that we're talking about this. Um, just as you were talking, I was tapping into the collective energy, and I was feeling that a single dad listening to this, who has children, or a single parent. So something that maybe you could like elaborate a little more if you wanted to help like the single parents. Like a lot of people don't realize, there are single dads out there too who are raising, children on their own. So it's not always, like a single mother, for instance.
Yes.
There's all sorts of like different roles that, we all go through. If we go through like certain divorces or maybe our, the partner, um transition or something like that,
Yes.
it makes it more challenging, right, as a single parent. So I was wondering if maybe you could share, something wisdom to help them with the raising of youth, of these children on their own that would help them like nurture them or help them as we're going through these chaotic stuff right now in times, because I'm sure they have like really highly sensitive, youth.
Yeah, well, it's really hard. That's who I mainly deal with. It's single moms. I haven't had the opportunity to work with single dads yet. But I know that there are a lot of single dads out there because I actually see it when, I check the Facebook group sometimes. I see a couple of dads chiming in saying, "Hey, there's some dads here too," you know. So
Yeah,
we
because I
know
was feeling that right now. So,
we know they're there, and it's a really a challenging thing, especially when, what I say to parents, any parent that's listening, is whatever battle that you have with your partner, or that you're going through a divorce, or your ex,
hmm.
don't let that affect your relationship with your child. And as a matter of fact, I would say try to fix that relationship to make it as cordial, as healthy as possible, because this is the thing. Our children learn their behavior, they learn their communication and their relationship styles, and they learn their boundaries by the way that we show them.
Hmm.
So, you could tell your kid, you have to do this and as much as you want, but your child is going to observe you, and that's what they're going to see. And this is one thing that I see a lot. I see a lot of struggles with parents when they're going through the divorce, and a lot of times they use the child as the token. So that is one thing that I always tell parents to please be very careful with that relationship, and to be an ally with their partner, and always think of the child, because that's the most important thing right now. And you asked for the relationship, this child was born, and now it's your job to guide them and give them the best guidance possible so that they can get out in the world successfully. And so, that's one thing I would tell parents, to be really careful about those dynamics, because it really, really affects the child. Is something that I see in coaching a lot. And the second thing is, to have compassion with yourself when it comes to the parent,
Hmm.
because the world
We
nowadays is
forget that.
so, It's so difficult right now. It breaks my heart like when I see these families because you have a mom who's single and she might have like two
Mhm.
jobs. Sometimes there are some people that are juggling three different type of jobs. They 20 hours in this job, 15 hours in this job, 20 hours in that one, doing 60-hour weeks, you know, and they're
Yeah,
feeling they're
it's hard.
feeling like they feel guilty and they feel like they're bad parents. And this is the
Mhm.
thing, that I would say quality is better than quantity,
Mhm.
you know? So whenever you're there with your child, just be present and, just be aware and have communication, have the conversations, because this is the thing that I notice. We get so busy in our day to day, that we think that, our children are fed, they've got clothing, we're taking them to practice, we're taking them to the extracurricular activity, whatever, we're doing everything we have to do. And now they try to address the problem. But what they don't realize is that, like with every relationship, there has to be that nurturing. There has to be that
Mhm.
nurturing. And that's why I say, quality time. So, for example, I know this is a statistic that I saw that the average American parent spends 15 minutes 15 minutes talking with their child a day.
15
That's not
minutes.
a lot. Yeah,
No,
it's
that's
the
not.
average. It's not. It's really not. And it's the usual conversation. Did you do your homework? Uh, did you have was school? How was school? Let's do the chores. Get your clothes. Clean your room. You know what I mean? And this is just simply not enough. It's not enough. And then parents, they get confused when they start having a child with trouble, right? But it starts with this conversation. It starts with the dialogue and being able to be there for them so that, when they have trouble, that they come to their parents and they feel safe enough, to be able to come to their parents when they have that problem. So creating that safe environment in your home is really important, and remembering that your children mirror you, and to be compassionate with yourself. So when I start coaching a lot of parents, they feel guilty because they realize, for example, a mom will say, well, I was so focused on my teens academic, and I've been pressuring them, for their academic, but I really haven't been having the conversations and asking them, okay, why are you struggling? Is it that you don't like
Mhm.
this task? Is it that you're not into math? Is there something else that you want to do? How can we help you? These are the little things that are missing in the conversation. And that when you start having these dialogues, because that's really what it is, it's a dialogue, then you start creating that safe home environment, and then you start seeing that your child starts to flourish. Because what happens is that we create these rules, or like the mom that I was saying about the math, she was being highly critical and she didn't even realize, the child would come home and she would fail a test, and the mom, who's so focused on academic, would be like, but how could you fail, and how could you this, and
Mhm.
how could you that? And so what happens, and think of this as an adult, if you were a child that was very criticized, you grow up insecure, you grow up with a lot of shame, and you grow up silencing that voice because you feel like,
Yeah.
okay, I don't have a say here. What I care about doesn't really matter. And a child consciously doesn't understand, oh, my voice doesn't matter, or I'm feeling insecure. They're just reacting to this and they're accommodating their behavior to be able
Mhm.
to survive, because we create patterns, and because all our behavior, everything that we do is just a pattern. And how do we create them? We create these patterns. Meanwhile, we go creating exchanges with other people in the world. So you're like, you ask someone out, didn't work out. So you're like, okay, maybe now I need to ask it differently. You know what I mean? And you change your plan a little bit, and then you go out and you try it again. That's what our children are doing, you know? So it's really, this is where the gentle parenting comes in. So when I talk about gentle or conscious parenting, this is what I mean by conscious parenting. I
Mhm.
mean, and this is what I try to explain to parents. So it's like, it's being really gentle and having these conversations and having the dialogue. And I know the parents are tired, but you got to have it. You
Yeah.
have to have it. You have to make the time, because if not, you're going to have the troubled child. And this is the difference between, that I say that my friends in Spain have their kids. And of course, they had the rebellion years and the challenges, but their children always came back, always reeled in, always did the right thing in the end. They've made mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
They've crashed the car, they've made their mistakes, but still it was manageable. There was nothing like a severe addiction, a severe problem, an attempt to suicide,
Mm-hmm.
a unwanted pregnancy, a running away from home. There was nothing ever serious because the family unit was strong. So it's being very conscious in that sense. So to the mom, like this simple example, like what I suggested was, okay, what you need to incorporate in the conversation is a little bit of praise. So when your daughter does something like picks up her table, her plate from the table, or cleans her room, or says something nice, say, I really appreciate that you did that. Or I really liked how you did this and this and this. I thought that was really cool. So that your children get praise,
So
but
enforcing
then
it.
exactly. So you reinforce both behaviors. Like
Mm-hmm.
you want to create attention to the bad behavior if they failed a test or something. You want to create attention to it and work with them on that. But you also want to praise them on the other things so that there's a balance in the
Mm-hmm.
conversation. That's what I mean by gentle parenting. Gentle parenting is not your child insisting, I want to go to the party, I want to go to the party, or I want to stay late, I want to stay up later. And then because you're
Mm-hmm.
tired, you're like, fine, I give in because you don't want to hear them anymore. And so you give in because that creates a problem too. So, I heard this amazing talk, and a mom was saying, so this is when I think of putting boundaries on my child and my child is saying, but I want this and I want this and I want this. I think of, well, my 14-year-old daughter in the backseat of a car, and now the boyfriend is telling her, but I want to have sex, but I want it, I want to have it. If we give in to the demands of our children at these
Yeah,
early
it's
ages,
interesting.
that teaches them, oh, when someone pushes hard enough,
Uh-huh.
I have to give in. And so this is why,
Uh-huh. Yes.
I want to teach parents the difference between gentle, conscious parenting
Mm, I
and
like
the
that.
other extreme of what we're seeing today, which is just being permissive. And we think that being permissive is being gentle and we're just thinking of our children, but it's having the wrong effects. It's what we're seeing today, that we're seeing all these kids with these problems, a lot of sense of entitlement. And now the parents are like, oh my God, I've created a little monster. And they don't understand how this happened. And now they're in shock. And it's all these little things that after a couple of years turn into the big thing,
Wow,
you know?
amazing. Yeah, the gentle, conscious parenting, it's so key to the awareness with the children, right? And this
Yeah,
applies, I feel like, to single parents, whether they're dad or mom, and how just being very consciously aware, paying attention to how the child is feeling and not to brush it off,
exactly.
and also encouraging them and having that positive reinforcement on what they're doing. So like if they're struggling with certain math or something, not to brush it off or tell them that they're terrible, because that's just going to spiral them to go to a worse path. And I'm just kind of recapping what you're
Or
just sharing.
like, or like, like let's take youth for an example. Someone telling you, oh, you're so insensitive. So let's say your child comes to you and says, oh, so and so said this to me. And you're like, oh, stop being so soft, or you're so sensitive. We're dismissing their feelings. What you want to do is you want to acknowledge the feelings and say, oh, like the child that's having the tantrum. I understand that you're really upset. The shut up, stop it, grounded, go to your room. That doesn't work because that we understand, you very know very well, that emotions don't dissipate, energy doesn't disappear, it gets transmuted. So now you have a child that's repressing all that energy that's going to come out later on in
Mhm.
life. So what you want to do is you want to acknowledge, I understand that you got insulted, that you're not feeling good. I
Mhm.
understand that you want to play, but now, you can't, or I'm telling you, no, I understand that you're upset. Uh, when I want to do something and I can't, I get very upset too. But
Mhm.
this is the reason why,
Yeah.
And so now imagine that dialogue going on. Well, you will grow up to be a completely different adult. You will grow up thinking, okay, my feelings are valid,
Hmm.
right? My feelings are valid, but it doesn't mean that now I can use my feelings as an excuse to do something that's not right, or do you understand? And
Yeah.
so you get validated, but yet you're given the safety, and you're still giving the boundaries and the discipline that is needed to grow up. Because this is the thing. Children are going to fight you, you know, uh, against boundaries. Children are going to fight you against rules. It's their job. As we are growing up, the whole thing that we want to do from the age of 3 is be independent. The entire time a child is growing up, they're trying to understand, okay, the more we grow up, the more we realize that we're separated from our parents, right? So it's creating that distance, and we want that autonomy. So we're gonna fight. And that's what the child, throwing the plate and saying no is doing, So that's understandable. You can't get mad at that. You just
No.
have to be able to find a way, find a healthy way to be able to deal with that behavior and not give in. So that's the difference, and I thought of your example, when you were saying, oh, you're too sensitive, because that's what we do. We either dismiss or we give in, and it's that balance, which balance is the hardest thing.
Yeah.
It's the
So what
hardest
would
thing for
you
us to find.
what would you suggest someone do with a child who throws a plate? Like, what would you suggest they handle it in a how would they handle that in a healthy way?
So, something like that, I would say something simple. Oh, you know that you are not supposed to do that. If they throw the plate, say, that type of behavior is not acceptable in our home, and it's not acceptable anywhere else either. You can't go out and do stuff like that. I understand that you're upset. Okay, but now we're gonna have to clean this mess up. Get the child to help you clean up the mess. And as they're cleaning up the mess, talk to them and say, why did you do this? Why are you upset? And this is the thing. When you ask questions, you break down that struggle, because all it is really is, from an age of like 2 or 3, we're having that control and that autonomy struggle. That's what a child's doing while he's throwing the plate. But as a parent, because of course we haven't dealt with our emotional trauma and our emotional pain, we get upset and we're like, how dare you go to your room? Now you don't eat. Do you understand? And so what we're doing is, now we stunt the child, and now the child has realized, okay, so I can't throw the plate, but I'm going to find another way to create my, and maybe I'm going to do it now behind your back. So you understand? So it's being able to address it in a healthy way. And more than anything, look, you're going to make mistakes. And I always tell parents, don't feel bad if you did something like really bad. Like if you like hit your child, or if you locked him up in his room and you made a mistake, or if you said some, harsh words. The most beautiful thing is realizing that you made a mistake and saying, look, I realized that I shouldn't have said that. Mommy gets upset sometimes. Mommy doesn't, have all the answers all the time, and I make mistakes. And own up to the mistakes, and think to yourself, okay, now I'm going to do a better job, and try to avoid that. So it's being able to deal with, okay, I've made mistakes in the past. Don't beat yourself up about it. Be compassionate with yourself about it. Don't punish yourself for it, But then now, how can I be better? And one thing that I tell parents is, ask a lot of questions, not invasive questions, in conversations. Be inquisitive, ask questions, and don't ask questions like, how was school? Because how was school doesn't ask anything about you as a person. Your kid's gonna say, oh, school was okay. That didn't get anything. So how was your day at school today? So tell me anything interesting that happened with you or your friends. Or if you know any of the friends, so tell me about, Mary. What did Mary do today? Is there anything interesting or fun that happened? And so you start creating that dialogue and that relationship with your child. And believe me, if you start doing that 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, you'll start seeing the changes. This is something that I also tell parents to be patient with, is the changes,
Yeah.
Now you've seen the trouble, and you want to change it. But remember, everything that we're dealing with is patterns. And if, you guys have had this pattern or this thing that's been going on in your house for a couple of years now, you can't expect to change it in a week. You got to give it some time. You will
Yeah.
see some change in 30 days, but you have to give it time.
Yeah, no, I like that technique because that's something that I actually been doing with my nieces and nephews.
Yeah,
And just kind of digging in, having conversation with them, like casual conversation, without sounding like I'm intrusive or anything like that. But
exactly.
it's just part of my mentoring, with the
Yeah.
children, which, for me, the youth are still like kids. And so, and what you said earlier about it takes a village, right, for the youth and our children, and it just reminded me of when I visited Bali in 2022, because literally they have villages. And so they have villages that support one another when it comes to the children. I remember talking to the locals about it, and it felt really good to see that, and I feel that's going to be expanding a lot more, in the
Yeah.
future with the new earth. I feel, that is the way of, the new earth and the new human.
Yes.
And I
Y-
feel like we're just going to be concluding now the episode. This is, really interesting stuff, and I really appreciate everything that you're sharing, the techniques that hoping that, the listeners are taking away, and that they're receiving, very helpful tips for them to help them with their parenting and with children and youth in their lives as well, not just, because they're parents, but also, also emphasizing the other part that you were sharing earlier about handling relationships, right? Whether they've been married and gone through a divorce, or maybe, they were boyfriend and girlfriend and had a breakup, but really it's how it's handled, right? Because if it's
Mhm.
handled in a very rough and harsh way from both sides, then it just kind of shows that and demonstrate for the kid, growing up. And,
Yes.
I would love to hear some of your final thoughts, from all of this.
Well, remember that, we have mirror neurons. This is why relationships are so amazing because this is how we learn the most. I mean, if you were stuck in an island by yourself, you couldn't learn about yourself because even if
Mm-hmm.
you're practicing, let's say you're practicing making a little boat with like some wooden trees, like how do you know that it's good if you don't have anything else to measure it with?
Mm-hmm.
You know, you also learn from just observing others. Like if I'm watching you and I see you smile, then I'm like, okay, we're good to go. Let's continue. If I see you frown, I'm like, oh, I think I did something wrong. Let me change, right? So you have to think that in the same token, our children use these mirror neurons to mirror us. And so
Mm-hmm.
the relationship is to me the biggest dynamic that we mirror. A lot of times we get into relationships and we're like, I don't even understand why I'm doing this or why I'm behaving this way or why I'm attracting this relationship, these relationships or whatever in our lives. And it's because of that. And so that's why I always tell parents that your kids are watching you. It doesn't matter what age. They're watching you and they're observing and they learn
Yes,
more. We all learn more from example because of the mirror neurons that we have
that is
than
so
from
true.
someone telling us. And so that's something that I always tell parents. And it's actually, I see it when I work with other people, when I work with young adults. I have to check myself because that's what you have to do. And so it's a second way to be able to take that journey inward for parents and look and see what aspects of themselves need healing, because the more that they heal, the
Mm-hmm.
better relationship they're going to have with their children.
Yeah.
That's the thing. That's why I like working with parents and the kid, because even if we help the troubled child, they're picking up a lot of stuff from their parents as
Mm-hmm.
well, and so the more that the parent has healed and has developed certain strategies too to guide their relationships in their lives, well then the more their children is going to grow, the more they're going to flourish and the quicker they're going to learn these techniques too. So
Yeah.
it's a great opportunity for parents to be able to dive into and to explore and to create change for themselves as well.
Yeah. And hence we're creating the new earth. Yay.
Exactly. We're
Well,
gonna
thank
win this battle. Well,
yes,
we're
we
gonna win
are.
this
I,
war.
I feel we already won it, in the other higher realms. Just a matter of us
It
jumping into
hasn't
that higher vibrational timeline
it
and
hasn't
making it happen
manifested.
in our
Yes.
physical reality, right? And I do share a lot
Yes.
of that in my episodes, a lot of different episodes on that. But thank you
Yeah.
so much, Naomi. And just wanted to say to the listeners that if you want to get in touch with Naomi, you can find all her contact information in the episode notes. If there's anything else you would like to share, Naomi, with us.
No, that's about it. Just, to be kind and compassionate with yourself. Remember, self-love is the most important thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the more self-love and self-acceptance that you
Yeah.
have, the
Yeah.
more compassionate and loving you're going to be with others. So
Oh,
that's why I always tell parents, take care of yourselves, because the better that you take care of yourselves and the more that you love yourself, the more you're going to be able to be there for your
yeah.
children.
Thank you for that reminder. It's so important for parents to know that who have, children, whether they're single or, if there's two parents, whatever the
Yeah.
case, but there has to be that fine balance with all of us. So thank you again. It's such a pleasure having you, Naomi.
Thank you.
Um,
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed this conversation.
yes, thank you.
If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to click like, save, and share with others so they can also experience what you just experienced. And stay tuned for some more high vibe episodes. And I'll be connecting with you in the next quantum field. Sending you so much love.